Now, admittedly, I am no expert, but from what I understand, the traditional Tea Party involves tea, of course, and lots of agreement. Lots of agreement about the lovely weather, the perfect drapery, the deliciousness of the crumpets and the bonnets and whatever else traditionally adorns a tea party. Everybody agrees it's agreeable, be nice. It's sort of the official Tea Party vibe. Not the vibe for the nationwide tea parties planned for tomorrow. We are learning now of a rift in the movement behind the Tea Party protests planned for tomorrow around the country. Yes, I said it is a growing teabagger rift, a conflict between different teabagging factions. In order to really understand this internal conflict, we actually have to go way back to 2007 in our cheap time machine. All right. In the Ron Paul for President campaign, a bunch of his supporters developed a plan to fly a giant Ron Paul blimp to Boston. And when the blimp got to Boston, they were going to dump boxes of tea into the Boston Harbor. Sound familiar? The blimp did not actually manage that flying reenactment of the Boston Tea Party, but the association of tea parties and even tax day protests with the libertarian movement, with Dr. Paul's presidential campaign in particular, is a pretty steadfast one. Dr. Paul did pull off a pretty impressive shadow convention held opposite the Republican National Convention in the Twin Cities last fall. It was a victory of sorts for Dr. Paul's backers, who support messages that are anti-tax, anti-spending, often anti-war, anti-Federal Reserve, and frequently quite anti-Republican Party. Now, on the eve of the National Tea Party protests, many of Ron Paul's supporters say that the mainstream Republican Party and leaders like Newt Gingrich have co-opted their protest movement. Libertarian Party activist and Tea Party planner Jason Pye told the Washington Independent today, quote, "Bringing in someone like Gingrich takes away from the message. Newt Gingrich enabled George W. Bush. He enabled the big spending. He lobbied conservative Republicans to compromise their principles and support Medicare Part D. He supported the bailout." Now, what you see here, this poster was posted online today as a response to Sean Hannity's decision to attend and broadcast his Fox News show from a Tea Party in Atlanta tomorrow. Now, this is not the product of a lefty anti-Fox News channel group. It was created and posted by libertarians in Georgia who say it is their Tea Party movement and they didn't invite Mr. Hannity. With all the focus on whether or not teabagging Tea Partiers represent the future of the opposition to President Obama, is the real story here, is the more honest story here, that the Tea Parties are, in fact, the Republicans trying to run off with the Libertarians' idea and getting the Libertarians very mad at them in the process. Joining us now is Stephen Gordon. He's a political consultant and blogger from Alabama. He was Ron Paul's state media coordinator. Mr. Gordon, thank you so much for coming on the show.
Good evening, Rachel. I've got a present for you, actually. These are tea bags, but these are special tea bags. This is a pair of Southern tea bags. I know up north y'all like your tea unsweetened, but in the South, in the deep South especially, our Republican politicians like their tea bags sweetened with taxes and spending.
That was very elaborate and much appreciated. I am a big lover of props. Thank you for bringing those. I want to ask you... So go ahead.
Newt Gingrich is a good example. I mean, Newt Gingrich could be one of these two tea bags because he likes his tea bags sweetened, let's say, with TARP funding. And this other one could be Mike Huckabee. We call him Tax Hike Mike in my circles because he likes his tea bag sweetened with tax increases. So you see, we've got a bunch of Republican, senior Republican officials in the Deep South that can't tell if their tea bags are swinging from the left or the right.
Well, do you think that Republicans like Newt Gingrich and the hosts from Fox News Channel and these other people who have decided to be the big headlining, nationally known folks who are attending these tea parties tomorrow, are they trying to accomplish the same things with these protests that libertarians and that, as you described them, your circle of friends there are trying to accomplish?
Well, we've been trying to cut deficit spending for a long time. Republicans, for the most part, have been increasing deficit spending. And Newt Gingrich, of all people, should not be involved in any movement to decrease deficit spending. In Alabama, we've had tea parties before, and there's been a lot of talk about astroturfing. And I'll pick on Mr. Krugman's article a little bit. He had some truth to it, and he had some bad points about it. The organization that was called Freedom Works, it was called CSE back then, helped us in our rally before, but they held a separate rally. We had a rally that had thousands of people, overflow people. And Freedom Works held an event, or CSE as it was called then. They rented this big place at the convention center in Birmingham, and nobody showed up for it. So the Grassroots can show for an event just because some of these Republican-type organizations are trying to control the outcome of it doesn't mean they'll necessarily be successful. It's important that the people at the grassroots level stick to our guns and say no when they try to co-opt our message.
Yeah, you know, a lot of people, myself included, were really impressed with the enthusiasm and the creativity and the commitment of Ron Paul's supporters in the presidential campaign. And it made me wonder at the time, and I wonder now, I guess in retrospect, has the Republican Party ever made any serious effort to court you guys, to try to bring you into the mainstream of Republican politics? I mean, Dr. Paul has run as a libertarian before, but this time he ran as a Republican.
Well, sometimes, I mean, I do consulting on Web 2.0 stuff, and they're always wanting me to help them with their Web 2.0 projects, but they're not wanting to shift their message or change their focus. And I hear a lot of other Ron Paul supporters saying more or less the same thing.
Stephen, I understand that in talking about astroturfing and these other organizations that are sort of getting involved after the fact, after this grassroots movement rose up, claimed the Tea Party symbolism, and used that throughout the Ron Paul campaign and actually throughout the Libertarian Party for a long time. There's a group called the Institute for Liberty, and one of their employees is quoted in the Washington Independent today saying that he's going to bring a large blue arrow to the Tea Party in D.C. tomorrow that'll be marked Tea Party Crasher. And he's planning on pointing that arrow at fringe protesters who show up at the event. If somebody pointed an arrow like that at you at one of these events tomorrow, what would you do?
That's a good question. Caught me off guard on that. If I'm not mistaken, this is the gentleman who's bringing Alan Keyes to speak in D.C. And if that's the case, it'd be pretty simple to grab a microphone and start pointing out how Alan Keyes has treated his own daughter.
Oh. Touché. Stephen Gordon, libertarian blogger and political consultant, paying me back for catching you off guard. Caught me off guard there, too. Good luck tomorrow. I understand you're going to be attending a couple of these events, and thank you so much for coming on the show.
Thank you, Ray.